A lively conversation was taking place in Mrs. Mitchell's class. The topic was very interesting. The students discussed about what they want to become in the future. The teacher was pleasantly surprised by the enthusiasm of her senior class. Someone wanted to be a policeman, someone a doctor, someone a blogger or a famous pop singer. But most of all, she was struck by Nick. He said he wanted to be a teacher. She asked him about the reason for his choice. Being teacher is easy. All they've got to do is read something from the textbook and load the students with homework. You just sit in a warm office, do nothing, and get paid. Nick's words upset Mrs. Mitchell a little. She tried to change Nick's mind about her profession. She talked about her everyday life and about the intricacies of working with children. But Nick wasn't convinced. Mrs. Mitchell didn't get angry or argue with him. She had an idea that she wanted to discuss with the principal. She offered to organize a day of self-government. Seniors would become teachers for a day. The principal liked the idea and helped Mrs. Mitchell with the organization. The teacher assigned her students to classes, but she paid special attention to Nick. She advised him to carefully prepare for the lesson. However, Nick chose to spend the evening at a computer. The next day, Nick began the lesson in a cheerful mood. But after a few minutes, he realized how difficult it is to work with children. They were often distracted and whispered among themselves. Nick barely calmed them down, but then he ran into another problem. He wasn't ready for the lesson because he had thought that he would read everything out from the textbook. But the monotonous reading didn't attract the attention of the children, and they did not listen to him at all. Nick didn't understand why they behaved like that. Then he called one of the students to the board to give an assignment. But the task was difficult for the boy, and he began to ask Nick questions. Nick was suddenly confused. He didn't know how to answer properly so that it would be clear to the boy, so he began to say something, but he could see the student wasn't getting it. Nick was ashamed that he could not help the student, and he was very upset about it. After class, Mrs. Mitchell came up to him. "How are you, Nick? Are you doing okay?" Nick was embarrassed. He was terribly ashamed of his opinion about the teaching profession. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell. I never thought that being a teacher was an incredibly laborious job." Mrs. Mitchell smiled and said that she was very glad that Nick was able to appreciate the teacher's work. A teacher is not a profession because a teacher doesn't just teach material. Teachers do their best so that students become good and responsible people.